Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Plus3 Futures and Commodities show. We are recording here on Friday, the 23rd of June, right before the close. My name is Ben Maldonado. As always, I'm here with my partner, Barrie Hederachi. How we doing, Barrie?
Doing pretty good.
Are you ready for the end of another month and half the year?
No choice, man. I'm ready. I'm rolling with it.
That's the proper attitude, right? You got no choice. It's coming whether you accept it or not.
Yep.
Bitcoin had a good week. It awoke from its slumber. So today we're going to cover Bitcoin as we always do at the beginning. I'll throw it to Barrie, and Barrie will cover what we call the big five, which is ES, bonds, crude oil, gold, the dollar and the euro, and copper. We threw another one in copper. And then he'll throw it back to me, and there'll be a few commodities I'll cover that look to be in good shape, or ones that we've commented on recently that we want to follow up on. This week we're going to cover the grains, wheat, corn, soybeans, and natural gas. So let's go right to Bitcoin, as it has a tendency to do. History does repeat, not exactly, but it rhymes. Look at here when it was boring, 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 and then boom.
Right.
Boring, 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 and then boom. Key thing is, and Barrie and I were talking about this before the show, right? The squares are great. We had a half square that was acting as support. We had full square timing here that was spot on, started the rally. But look at what a simple trend line did. It broke the trend line, messed around a little bit there, and then boom, we're gone. And the key thing is we got through the full square. We now have two full bars above the full square. So the key test, a couple alternatives we could see here. We could go right on up and bang up into this half square. We could pull back and sit on top of the full square, which would be the most bullish. Or we come back like we did here, get some bars above it, and then start crisscrossing. And that would be Chop City again. So we just watch price now. At least we know the direction now. Now it's until we get back below that full square. Bitcoin looks bullish. It looks better bid. So, and that's kind of what we use the squares for, to give us that, sort of green light, red light, yellow light sometimes, but green light, red light once we clear a square. And right now we're clearing the square, and things do look bullish.
Right.
Anything else you got to add here on Bitcoin, Barrie?
Just that last week we talked about breaking up the trend line to the upside. We got to watch it because it's compressing down into that. And I think we talked about a level up in here, probably 27 something for the breakout. I can't remember which number I gave, but around there.
Right.
And well, we got the break, so we're on the way.
And what's interesting to watch too, for people that are trying to learn about squares and study squares, notice this big breakout bar. Look at where we closed and look at where it met resistance. That's how you know your squares are working, right? When you get action like that around,
yep,
you get the kind of price action around one of these important squares, or down here, over here on the half square. But that shows you, right? That was an important spot. The daily high could not get through it, but then the next day they powered, after they go down, they test the breakout here, powered right through it and closed above the square. So as long as we're above this full square, by the way, all the levels that we talk about, in addition to all the markets that we cover but may not talk about on the show, are on a Google Doc spreadsheet, which I'll post a link to when we tweet out the link to the new show. So the key level is now around 28,850. As long as we're above it and can sit on top of that, which is in here, it's bullish. If we get caught back below it, we have to consider that it's probably going to be either chop or weakness, and this was a false break. So
yeah, there'll be counter trends from here. Those are the ones we want to watch, see if they're corrective in nature, or if they're just chopping around. So
exactly.
We'll have to see, because we have the potential for a false break up here too.
Absolutely. You can see here's the high, and we haven't meaningfully cleared it yet.
Yep.
So got to watch that. All right, let me throw it over to you. Let's dive in on the big five and see what it looks like. Is that a high, the high, or just a little pause? That's the question.
Is that the question?
That is the question.
Call it out. I would say it's a high. And why do we say that? Well, first of all, we said there are some time counts going into this high. Some cycles expiring just in that zone. It could be a little bit before, a little bit after. And that's why we've been really cautious about this final little break. I've been watching all the price action up in here.
Yep.
Just to keep it simple, just a couple of things for next week. Speaking of time, I don't have a calendar chart over there, but here there's a calendar chart. Just want to show, we have a 45-day move going into the high. So I would say that should be a good high, at least for a bit.
Like a decent pullback, decent correction off of that.
Yeah, I would say a decent correction, not just a counter trend. So like a decent correction, like if you look at all this, this is a decent correction. This is not a counter trend, right? And this is a decent correction. This is a correction. In the time frames we're talking about weekly. So, so within this trend, let's say a counter trend would be this 2 days up, 4 days up, right? 3 days up. So that being the frame, we did have this 45-day move, which technically we can call it like a 45-day blow-off move. Wasn't exactly a blow-off, but it was in some of the AI stocks and all of that. So they all kind of followed the same pattern. That being said, that's why we've been cautious, and I think we've talked about it on the last few shows. That said, let's see. We had this little buffer zone here, 43.25 to 43.70. The key is here, if we can hold it in here. We had 4 days down without a single counter trend, which means the markets are weak. So we'll see, if we get 1 or 2 day counter trend and it can't continue, that would be a very good sell signal. And
right, especially if we get stuck below any important levels too. That'll really be something to sell.
Yeah, so this is where it's easy to get all mixed up in the market. Is it going up or down, or what's going on? So it depends really on your perspective you come into trade with, your trading system. So in our case, we can only speak from our perspective, and that being, we're looking for corners and we're looking for the next trend in the other direction. So if that's the case, this has the potential to be a corner, and that's what we've been talking about. Now we're kind of in the phase of confirming that, right? Just like we saw a corner down here, and it took a couple of days to confirm, but taking a couple of extra days to confirm down here really didn't matter because, the moves kept going, right? So there's plenty of room to go. And this has that kind of a flavor to it because we were 180 trading days going up into it. And if we move it to the other low, we're right there. So we're in the ballpark, right? And from either low. So if you split it down the middle, we're right there. And we're 45 degrees from this low here. So I think there's enough to say, hey, we have something going on here, a little more than just a little counter trend on the way to a big bull market, right?
So, and the key is going to be this next counter trend is, do we make a lower high?
If this is all correct, that will be a lower high.
Yep, it will.
Okay.
If it's right.
So follow us, on Twitter for updates, real time. We'll be calling that out, and I'm sure we'll nail that high when it comes, either with the fuse line or 30-minute squares or something, right?
Right.
So, like I said, people that are on a longer time frame really don't have to be that concerned with exactly where the counter trend ends. Generally, that's what we're looking for. And when the counter trend lets out, what we're really watching to see is, can it clear this right away? So this buffer here is sort of important, right? So I'm watching that. That's really kind of it. Is that clear enough?
Yeah. I think it's, we've got a high that came in. Now we have to see what kind of a high it is. Right.
Right. And the quality of the counter trend will tell you that. And especially, like I said, if we get 1 or 2 day counter trend and the low of that high bar gets taken out, well, I think that's a very good signal, a trigger, you can call it. And if that happens to take these levels out within a day or two, well, we're off to the races then. And then afterwards, we get stuck under this. If you want to play it forward, right? If you get stuck under this, then we know the markets are soft for a while and the high is in place. But we're already calling the high to be in place, and we're looking to confirm it with that next counter trend.
Yeah, my key spot, I have a full square at 44.44. So if we get stuck on that, under that on the next counter trend, it's like the nail in the coffin for me.
Right. And I think we have that level on the 30-minute too. So
Yeah. Yep.
it's right there.
Right in that spot.
And why are we concerned with counter trends? Well, let's look at some of these highs and see how the counter trends came in. So here's a high, right? We get a high, 1, 2, 3, 4 days down, 2-day counter trend, and whoosh, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is what we're watching for, that first counter trend. Another high, 1, 2 days down, 1-day counter trend, outside reversal, and whoosh. And here's another one. We had inside day, 1, 2, 3, 4 down, 1-day counter trend, outside reversal, and whoosh. Right from there on, is all counter trends are downside. So that's what we're talking about. And here's another one. We were stuck in here, down, 1, 2-day counter trend, inside day, and then outside reversal, boom.
Perfect.
So you see how common they are.
Yeah. Yep.
They're very, very common, and that's why we want to watch them. So, simple enough.
And you can also show the opposite, Barry. Like when it comes down and then the high gets taken out, you don't have a lot of downside, right? It pulls back and does just an A, B, C, D, and then it takes out the previous high. Like back in March, April of 21. Those types of moves, or November, December into the January high. You can see we pulled back and then we come up when we make a higher high, and then it's over.
Right. Then it's over. Yeah. ABCs all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of the take. I think it's simple enough. We'll just keep it at that. Let's move on to the weekly. So here we have almost an inside day, right? Which is very dangerous.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we had 81.75 as a low last week, and this week it was 81.50. So technically, we took out the low, right? At least as of now, we haven't. Market's about to close, but we'll see how that goes. But we're probably not going to close down there. But nonetheless, it's a down week, and we had a number of things calling for some kind of a high up in here, time wise and price wise. So let's watch it. And last week I said, we had like 1, 2, 3, 4 weeks up. So we're due for some kind of a counter trend anyway. The point is it some kind of a counter trend or actually a full blown correction? And if you look at how far we are from the lower trend line, we could certainly have a correction and still everything will still hold together.
Yes.
Makes sense. Yeah. Yep. And let's look at the 30-minute. So there's your 44.45. You had 44.44. And that's that line right there. That was a key line to watch. And the other line was coming off this is just a 30-minute that I post on Twitter every day. And over here we had this 44.75, 76 area with 360 degrees up from the low. And that area was resistance. And you can see how the market kind of really pumped it up, right? Trying to get on top of that. And if you can't really get on top of a big number like that, then it's signaling weakness. You know what I mean? So that's kind of how that goes. And then we were watching 44.45 to see if we can hold above it. Couldn't do it. And then we had this little buffer zone set up on the 30-minute. It's 44.10 to 44.25. If the markets were strong, we'd hold above the 25. If they were weaker, we'd get down to 44.10. And you can see the first time we tested it, went down to 10, came up, couldn't even get close to the 44.45, and couldn't really hang about 44.25 either, right? Which is this upper part of the box right there. And just, after that, it really softened up. You can see it went back into the zone again, couldn't get above that upper number, 44.25, right in there, came back down, tapped 44.10 again. And then we went back down to the 270-degree level, which is where these other two spikes also stopped. So it would make sense to do a little bit of a false break here, which we did, right? Over from this spike. And now we're kind of rallying back up. But, this 44.10 area, as you can see all these tries over here. That's really the area to take out first. So basically, what did we see? We saw that, on the daily, we had that blowout kind of a move come in, and, a very orderly, let's just say, correction, and to exactly 90 degrees down. So it's nothing to really write home about, but it's also a little too orderly. So we have to pay attention. Everything starts out very smooth before all hell breaks loose. So let's watch it. Now you guys know what the levels to watch on basis daily, 43.70, 43.25 is really the zone we want to see price get stuck below, or if it can hold, and especially on a counter trend coming back down, if it holds through here, it'll be positive. My guess is if we get a decent counter trend, especially a 1 or 2 day, not more than that, then it's probably going to take this level out, and that will be the signal of a much, much larger correction. So we'll be catching it like up in this area here.
The other thing, Barry, to think about, and it's super simple, but it's surprising if you go back in history and look at it, how many times it works. We're making a high right into an important natural cycle, the summer solstice.
Yeah, of course.
And I encourage people that are interested in cycles, just go back and look at the solstices, the equinoxes, and see it's just another tool you can add. It's not going to be, you buy it on this, you sell it on that, but it's a tool that can give you another sort of data point that you can put into your analysis and say, okay, that's interesting. We're making a high going into the summer solstice. I got to remember that. Now do the technical support, a major high, a minor high, any kind of high, right? And that's what Barry's doing, is he's showing you and he's making the case that a high came in, price action has shifted. Now we're getting evidence that, the supply demand dynamic is shifting.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's just a way that you can, add cycles and layer it into your work. It's not when this cycle happens, you have to do this, but it's something that you have to note and see what happens once the cycle comes in. Do things change? Does the behavior of the markets change?
Exactly. All right, let's move on to bonds. Not
Another
much
boring week in bonds.
Yeah, it's a boring week, which means, something's coming up.
It's coming. It's coming. Yep.
What's interesting is all the lows through here sat exactly on our equilibrium line. Very good. If you guys didn't catch it, the reason that's impressive is we put the line in before prices even got anywhere near this. If you remember, right? A few weeks ago.
As soon as you could put the Gartley in, the lines were drawn, and that was back in May.
But yeah, you guys can go back, 3 or 4 or 5 shows and check the bonds. You can just go down in time and check the bonds, and you'll see there's nothing in here. And you can see, prices came in, boom, 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 just perfectly lined up. Of course, it's also getting compressed by the 50% of the square right above it. So one of these will have to go give out.
Yep.
And these bigger boxes we drew out, I don't know, probably a couple of prior sessions ago. It's just to show where we think it's, bonds are stuck if they really don't have any price action in either direction of the 50% of the square. So still, the case is pretty much the same, 129 to the upside. Downside is really, take Friday's low for support going into next week. If we break that, then we have a shot at, going down and maybe checking the lower boundaries of this consolidation. And if you look at the weekly, really not any better.
Same story.
Not much to talk about for the last month, really.
Yeah, just let it play out. That's all.
Yeah. So I would say at this point, we had this other big expanding triangle type of thing happening. And now we can actually draw this trend line because we know that's what's working. So that's really kind of it. Is, when the markets are really not trending, all you can do is just draw a bunch of lines and just wait to see which lines are going to be working out. So in this case, we have a lower line and we have a very clear upper line. And this is a very bearish looking setup. So if we can break to the upside here and then pop down, that happens. That's a very common pattern for something like this.
Big picture, it looks like a big wave forward, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, this, yeah.
Yeah.
And this pattern, this kind of triangulating and then, kind of falling out of bed is, it's a very common pattern if you guys watch for it, especially at key levels. So that's where we, when you combine, squares with the patterns, with the trend lines, you can really scope it out and dial it into a better way to understand it versus patterns without the squares,
Mm-hmm.
So that's really something. Well, here's another, I just saw this. Here's another, speaking of triangles, here's one, right? So, it was kind of boring, compressed.
That was multi-month too. Look at how long that took.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's say the trend line, even if we drew it from here, right? Still took about a month and then broke down. And then another one over here for the final break. You can see how some markets do it way more often.
Right.
And there, you had it twice. And it can do it to the upside too. So here's another one here.
Yep.
So you see, it's not that complicated. You don't really need AI driven all kinds of systems to take seriously.
Yeah.
Here's another one. See, when you start looking for them, they're all over the damn
They're
place.
all over it. Yep. This market likes to triangulate.
So there's one and boom. So anyway, oh well, here's a big one right there. We were watching in real time.
Yeah. Yep.
So there's one there.
Yep.
And we got that, the counter trend.
Back test. Yeah.
Yep. Back test. So you guys, so anyway, so here's one in real time. So we'll follow it, catch the next episode. We'll be here.
Right.
We'll follow through. Let's look at let's move on to crude oil.
Another sideways market.
I'll be drinking the same thing bonds are drinking because it's pretty much the same deal.
Crude and cotton right now are just totally sideways.
Mm-hmm. And well, that's all right. There's other things to trade, so that's what you want to do. So this is the box we drew out last week, and basically we stayed within that. This is absolutely going sideways.
Yep.
So what do?
Leave it alone.
You leave it alone, right? And you watch for signs. Now you guys can draw these lines in here. You can draw it from here or from this high. Either one would work. There's one. And you can connect the lows. And next week we should get some kind of a thing if you're ready.
Yep.
So if not, if we just kind of go sideways right through the triangle, well, we draw some more lines. But drawing lines and waiting is okay. That's just part of
part of trading.
Yeah, it's like waiting for the fish to bite. So not a big deal. So we're waiting to see what happens here. The box, if you guys want the prices for the box, is about, just say, well, let's go down to 67.50. 273.50 is kind of the box. And
also, Barrie, another thing we have to
eyeballing it, right?
Another thing we have to be clear on is that just because we say leave it alone doesn't mean you don't pay attention to it.
Yeah. Leave it alone.
Have to pay attention.
Orders in, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what it means. Let me clear the board a little bit. There you go. See a little better. Next, we'll go on to the weekly. Well, same old story.
Right.
And I'm not going to draw a box because I think it's pretty damn clear what it's doing.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's your downtrend. It's kind of compressing. Basis weekly, at least. It doesn't have a whole lot left. Maybe we can go one or 2 weeks more. Still, something would have to shake out of this.
For now, nothing to do but watch.
Yeah, nothing to do on the weekly. I mean, what we can do is we can look at, so we can see we're coming into kind of a critical area, but not amazingly. And what else can I say here? Well, we have 50% of the square at the support level, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we're stuck under the 45 from the high, clearly. And not much to do till we start developing some kind of a trend. So we'll see how that goes.
Right.
Yep. Moving on to gold. Well, we talked about last week, once we slipped under this zone, that was our first sign. If you guys notice, we have this sort of green light, yellow light, red light kind of a system. Mm-hmm. And, we were looking for some high to coming up in here, 135 trading days. And then I said, normally what happens is if the market is strong enough, it'll come off of that, hold this area up here, and then continue the trend. Let's say if we were to go another 90 days or something. But the key is if we can hold that, then we know, well, uptrend is pretty much over. Let's see what happens. If there's a way to trade it, if you're going to trade the short side, well, that's another thing to consider. We're not trading the short side in gold right now. A little too risky for at least my taste. And so we were watching it, and getting below 90, I said, is kind of a weakness. That's pretty much in any market. And you can see how gold got stuck under it. It was really spending some time trying to get above into the zone again. It couldn't. And then this week we just sort of sold off. So it looks like we have a little more to go, probably 1887. See what happens. But that high, it came in, 135. We were watching it in real time. And we talked about trend lines last week. You can see how you can just put the trend line and say, you know what, if it breaks that, we're probably pretty much done. And the magic of trend lines, man, never ceases to amaze me. Just never quits.
It's a great marker to tell, just to give you a heads up.
Yeah. It's like one of the most magical things if you can do them right, if you can draw them correctly. I should say that. Let's move on to the weekly gold. So what happened here? So basis the weekly chart, we had support at 1919 that we've been rattling off for months and months and months. And we found support there this week, came down to it. And we had this channel drawn up. We had 2000 at the upper end. You can see how we went and tapped that. After that, we had an inside day. Then we had all that weakness coming last week. And I said, well, this is pretty much done now because it broke it. It doesn't matter if they bought it up. It's in a weak position. And this week we saw why. And 1919 was a support. So the next one is 1881. I think that's the one that we saw in the daily. And so this is another one of these boxes that I've drawn up. This is a while back last year, but pretty much the same story. If we can hold in here, okay, things are more or less intact. But if we take this 1881 out, then I think we have a whole other process working. And we'll have to wait. So we'll see. And we could do an ABCD down because that is set up.
Sure.
Maybe we ought to draw that in.
My weekly support's at 1911, so right there in your same area.
Is that where it comes in?
Yeah, that's what I have on my weekly square, 1911.
Well, it worked right here. I don't know if you guys can see that. We did a ABC right there. Really nailed the low. So it's possible we get another one going into this. We'll see how that works out.
Sure.
Next, take a look at copper. Well, we talked about exactly, we had a bunch of days up looking for some kind of a counter correction at this point. And I said, if we can hold above the 50%, it'll be in really good shape. And we didn't.
Nope.
It's not in really good shape. It's in decent shape. So we'll see what happens. Let it correct and finish up. It did give us a good first impulse up there. So let it rest a bit. The key level to watch is this 384. See if we can get back above it. Otherwise, we'll wait to see where we're going to find support. We're not quite there yet. So copper, we have a little bit of time. And you can see that on the weekly. And the reason I'm all comfortable about it, you can see how weekly we tapped exactly
where the apex.
Trend line, apex, right at the trend line. So these look like, you guys see all these scratches on my charts and like, what's all this junk? But, all that junk actually, provides really good information. So you can see this week after it tapped that line from below, which we've had for weeks and weeks in this place. You guys can go back and check the charts under copper. And what happened as soon as we tapped it, boom, selling came in. So it's not the end of the world. I think, this low held. So I'm guessing we're probably going to, at least basis weekly, I think we should be able to hold somewhere halfway decent. So that's the copper weekly. Let's move on to the dollar. Dollar had a pretty good week. At least the last couple of days, right? So dollar, the story is, if you guys are watching this every week, we found support here. We're looking for support. We're looking for a move up. We were up in this area, and I was looking for some kind of a correction, shallow one at first, but we got a little bit of a deeper one. Fine, no problem. And this trend line was drawn in, and you can see how it came right into that trend line. Yesterday, right? day before Wednesday,
And then a
Thursday,
nice reversal off that.
and a very, very hard reversal off of that. So now if the next, we might go up a couple of days and the next reversal, is a higher low, we can continue along the way. This looks very good. We'll see how that works out. But for now, it held here, higher low, held the low. So it looks like it's doing okay. Moving on to the weekly dollar. Well, you see the trend line there, Ben. And God, I don't know if I drew that before or after the show, but anyway, we do have the two lows here, right? So you could have drawn that any time between now and last February or March. Either way, we came right to that, and it's also the next eighth line level on the square of 90. So our basic case we've had made all this time was, long as it's above the 90, the market is very bullish and it might consolidate down here, but eventually it's probably going to go higher. Not probably, eventually it will go higher. So far it's triangulating again. Maybe this is the week of triangles. Today's a triangle episode, right?
Right.
So we have triangle there, and we'll see how it breaks out. Here's another triangle right there. You can see they're all over the place.
It's a sure sign of indecision, isn't it?
Yes, and it always resolves
confusion
in a very, very hard way. Very, very.
Because half the people are wrong, and they gotta reverse pretty quickly.
That's right. So here's our daily euro, and last week we left it off with pointing out that this is the zone. This is our box of resistance, and 144 degrees up from the low. We were expecting it to turn around up in this area, and well, it did that.
There you go.
Right, Ben? There you go. So now, and the dollar turned, so everything's looking very good. Everything's dialed in. So we're looking for it to go lower, especially if we can take 1080 out. We'll look for it to go lower. Looking at the weekly euro, same thing.
Story.
This
same story.
110 area, 110, 111 area was resistance, a big blue line. We were expecting a 1 or 2 week correction, 1 or 2, 3, even 3 bars. So we went one inside bar, 1, 2 bars up. So if we take out the low of this week's bar, it could get very weak. So there's a heads up. NASDAQ checking that little support.
It's a great example of what we were just talking about with the trend lines, right?
Yeah.
And you're going to see, I'm going to show you something on nat gas with the trend lines, right? Remember, they start out flat, momentum starts kicking in, and these things start really going. Well, on the way down, as Barrie showed on which market was it? Was it ES that broke the trend line, or one of them broke the trend line, right? I can't remember which market you were showing. If NASDAQ breaks this trend line, this high has more significance, right? We start saying, okay, well, we know the momentum is cracked. We know that the fast part of this move is now over. Now what's coming next? Well, a half square is super important, and the trend line's right there. So we know we've got a really important spot at the lows from yesterday. That half square is right at 14,955. So as long as we can sit on top of that, go sideways, burn off time, yeah, we'll break the momentum because we're going sideways, but we won't be doing a lot of damage in price. Whereas if we break the trend line, we lose and clear the half square, then we open up down to the full square here, which is around 14,340. So again, we take notice. We have a high come in. We had some geometry at the high that we pointed out last week, which was we were 144 up from the December, January lows, basically 144 by 120, and 144 in price is significant. So we're going to watch, see when and if support gives way. And then, as Barrie was talking about with ES as well, what kind of counter trend do we get? Do we get a lower high? Do we get only a 1 or 2 day counter trend? That will be a sign of weakness, and sort of give us additional evidence that this high here is fairly significant. So we have to wait and see. We know it's a process, just like when we find bottoms, the tops are a process. You got to accumulate evidence as more price action is revealed to us. And we're in that stage right now with NQ. So what else do you have to add here on the NQs, Barry?
Well, I think a correction even all the way to like 14,400, let's say, would be, I would consider it to be normal. It's really, if we break that, okay, if we, oh yeah, there you go.
Yeah, 14. This is 14,340. Yeah.
Yeah, that's close. And yeah, it's good enough.
Mm-hmm.
If we break that, then I think we have something coming. Up until then, we can at least expect it to come and test that.
The other important thing I want to point out is counter trend highs on the way down right there.
Mm-hmm.
Looking pretty false breakish, isn't it, Barry?
Yep.
Yeah. So again, it's something to note. It's nothing definitive, but we stack evidence up, and then when the scales tip enough, then we start firing bullets.
Right.
So take note of that.
Mm-hmm.
All right. As far as the commodities go, let's talk about the commodities. We're going to cover the grains today, and we're going to cover nat gas. Crude and copper, Barrie covered them. They're in correction mode. Sugar is doing a high level, sort of ABC consolidation, but there's nothing to do on the bullish side there, and bigger picture remains bullish. Cotton is completely sideways. Cocoa is put in some sort of high, and it's working on a correction now. Coffee was one we were pretty high on. It looks like it's still got a little bit ways to go in finishing up an ABC down from on the daily. So that one's not quite ready yet. Gold, Barrie covered. Silver's the same. It's correcting. So most of the commodities are in some sort of consolidation or correction. The ones that I want to talk about today, I think, are, in the case of the grains, they've demonstrated that we made lows and we're in a bullish position there. And with nat gas, we're coming out of the hole, and we could begin to do that with speed here shortly. So let's start first with the grains. So here's wheat.
Mm-hmm.
If you go back and check a few shows back, we were talking about the lows in this time frame in here. We've had a beautiful push up out of the low, and I believe we've made a short-term high here. On the 4-hour, we're 90 degrees up from this low. And as Barrie has pointed out on multiple shows, 90 is fairly significant. So we're watching to see, we have a 1-day correction right now. First day today was a pullback. What kind of pullback are we going to get? Do we sit on top of the full square here? Do we come back and test this trend line? Do we pull all the way back to the half square? Even if we did, that would be still super, super bullish.
Mm-hmm.
And remember, we're looking here at a daily, right? So having a steep pullback into this half square, while it might get everybody scared and, oh, we broke the trend line, everybody gets all bearish, it would be perfectly normal if we had a higher low here and then took off in some sort of wave 3. So wheat looks good. I think this was a high. Interestingly enough, Barrie, the high on wheat, 622. Right. Summer solstice, 621. And wheat, corn, soybeans are certainly things that react to the seasons and react to the sun. Something to take note of. Right. But this, I really like it. I love this structure coming out of that low. It gives me much higher confidence that this is a good low. And now we just want to see, what does this first big or reasonable correction look like, to give us an opportunity to either add to positions, or if we didn't get involved in the market. If you didn't get involved, you didn't feel comfortable, let's watch this pullback and see if it gives you a good opportunity to participate in what looks like, a new bull trend here on wheat. Mm-hmm. What are you seeing when you look at wheat?
Well, one thing is, you call this thing perfectly.
Thank you.
last couple of weeks, right? We saw
Yeah.
it coming in, saw the low, just every step, broke the trend line again, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we had the descending triangle forming right through June, took that out. And well, what do I see? I think if we can hold above, let's say, any counter trend above, let's say 660,
Mm-hmm.
the trend is intact, everything's good. So we just want to make sure counter trends hold above that level.
Look at
right
your
there.
660. It's right near the half square.
Very close. Yeah, it's a little above that. Yeah,
Yeah, right in there.
Mhm.
Yep.
So that would be the place to watch. If you guys need a halfway point, I think 708 is the other one to watch.
Which is right in here.
Right. So obviously if it can hold above 708 and go, it's very bullish. And even if it comes all the way down to the half square, it's still okay.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Look, it looks good. Let's go to corn. Remember, corn was ahead of these other ones. The other thing about corn and soybeans is this big down bar here
Mhm.
was a change in contract
Right.
where we shifted from I think from July to September contract.
Right.
Anyway, so what we're doing is track the low into here. You know, they had called out the false break, called out the support on the half square. Beautiful push up. Now we're pulling back. Today, big pullback today. So now here's what we want to see. We want to see it make a higher low. This is really, really key here. And it's further along than wheat. So let's see. Do we get a higher low? If we get a higher low and then reverse on a daily, when you want to be involved in this market, because then you're potentially catching a third leg up, right? 1, 2, 3. And threes are power moves, right? Something like this.
Yep.
Or to the downside, something like this. And that's what we're hoping and looking for. And all the work we do is to try and isolate these moves to catch the third. And corn is a perfect example right now where we're coming in and we're looking to see, making price prove it to us that it's going to make a higher low. So that's what I see in corn. This next week's going to be crucial. Do they have some follow through? We did close on the lows, so that was a big sell. So let's see if there's follow through next week, or we stabilize and start, building a base to potentially grab that third. What do you think about corn at this spot, Barrie?
Corn, I think, well, I wish, this is why it'd be nice to be able to do the contracts just like Gann did instead of having these big gaps, when we roll over, doing month over month.
Right.
But anyway, I think 570 is sort of the level I have. As long as we can hold above that, we're pretty good.
Right in here.
Little above, yeah, right there.
Mm-hmm.
So let's see if we can do that.
Yeah, let's see. Also, remember Barrie was talking about the trend lines, right? If you're riding this thing up, when the trend line broke, you knew, okay, if you're a shorter term trader, this leg's done.
Right.
Again, the power of those trend lines.
Mm-hmm.
Let's jump on to take a look at soybeans. Similar pattern to corn. Look at the close today. I love it when it does this.
Right
Smack on the full square.
Mm-hmm.
It just, again, it shows you that and that's a weekly close too, right? The close on Friday is a weekly close, right on the full square. So this is, and you don't have to be a genius. You don't even have to have squares to see that this is an important area. Look at all back in here, all the price action that happened around this area.
Mm-hmm.
So same thing with corn. We want to see, do we get a higher low? Beautiful move up, and look where it stopped, right? A half square and trend line.
Right.
And that's the trend line from the highs last June too, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, it's just like corn. We had the first move out. We're in the second move. Do we get a higher low? Do we reverse up? Do we have an entry where we can get in with a decent risk reward where we possibly catch a large, fast move higher? And that's what I think the setup in beans in. The other thing I wanted to show you on the weekly, again, the power of trend lines. That's your weekly high.
Mm-hmm.
So the trend line stopped it. So, we're still triangulating here, but on the lower time frames, we're looking for that fast move. I just show this to show, part of the reason, maybe one of the reasons why we sold off and why we, reversed here at the high on beans.
Right.
But going back to the daily, what catches your eye on this chart?
Well, what catches my eye is support level over here at like 1373.
Mm-hmm.
So
Right.
we really need to kind of stop there. If we don't, then we have to wait for the entire thing to recycle.
Yeah, this is the on the next eighth line, basically.
Yeah, I think we ought to hold above that.
Right. So the summary is the grains are bullish, right? They all had very nice moves out of the lows. Now we're watching to see
how the counter trend, yeah.
Exactly. Well, how do the counter trends look? How many bars do they last? How deep is the price pullback? Do we respect support or do we blow right through it?
Mm-hmm.
And those will be the clues as to, okay, what's coming next? What are we going to catch on the next wave up?
Right.
All right. Lastly, let's take a look at everybody's favorite, the Widowmaker, natural gas. Now, what's interesting about gas this week is crude was really weak this week. It had it got hit pretty hard during the week.
Right.
But look at this little sucker.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that I want you to notice here, remember the trend lines, we talked about the steepening lines being a sign of momentum coming in.
Yep.
You have to put in a third line yesterday when we had this daily reversal on Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
It's just basically another way of visualizing higher lows, right?
Yep.
And steeper lows, right?
Yep, exactly.
So why is this important? This is a sign of momentum. It's a sign of buyers stepping up to buy more quickly, right? Look how long this correction lasted. Look how long this one lasted. Basically a day, 2 days, call it 2 days. This one was about a week or more. So again, I don't know why. I don't know what the fundamental reason is. I don't know what the news is going to be. Somebody wants to own this, and they're willing to pay higher prices over the last 3 months. Now, the next big test is this full square, which is 282. A close over that and clearing and staying on top of that opens up the full square up into the 4 range. So I really like the way this one is acting. I want to show you something else on the weekly before we finished up. It's going to be the first close over this half square since, what is that? The close here in March, since March.
Yep.
It's pretty significant.
It's happening slowly.
It's slowly, it's creeping, it's boring, it's probably frustrating all the bulls that are in it. But man, it sure looks like it's getting ready to do one of these. And the idea is, you got to be in it to catch it.
That's right.
Because it's tough. It's tough. It's a bucking bronco that's tough to jump on once it starts moving.
Yeah, yeah.
Anything else any other insight you have here in looking at nat gas?
Well, I think the lows are coming in nicely. I think the low is in. There's a very high probability. Every day it's becoming clearer. I would say we can confirm the low being in place. I'm confirming it for myself that the low is in place.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean that's a big deal. Other than that, we cleared the area like we talked about. I mean, last week I think I said if we can hold above this
area here.
Yeah, right in there, we're good. And
did
really
that.
my resistance is almost at 3. Until we get up there, I think coast is kind of clear. Where that spike is in March.
Yep, exactly.
So we'll just trade it as it comes.
That's right. Yeah,
Now,
that mark.
the point there is why I don't have a whole lot to say is a whole lot to say was in trying to figure out the low.
Correct.
Now, ones that kind of comes in, well, then you just trade it in that direction. And
you're looking for more evidence that gives you confidence that that is the right direction, that is a good low, and nat gas continues to do the things it needs to do to add to that evidence.
Yeah, like for example, till it gets to 3, I don't have a whole lot to look at other than just try to trade in that direction. And we had a good setup here a couple of days ago. That 1-day pullback was really good on Wednesday. So after that, we just trade, and we'll wait till we don't have any timing points coming up. I don't think yet. So we'll wait for things to develop.
And going back on the just a quick thing on the cycles. The high in wheat was 622. The high in corn was 620, which is 1 day before the solstice. And the high on beans was 620.
Right.
So for any of the doubters out there that think those cycles don't matter, those just natural, simple cycles that we all experience as, beings on this planet, they do matter. And they have an effect. It's not the holy grail. You can't trade just off of that, but it's another tool for you to filter out what's going on in a market and trying to understand what's happening.
Right.
Where's your focus?
I was going to say, just the only other thing I would add to this is where we came up 45 days, June 16th. Last Friday was 45 days from the low on April 14th. And we didn't really turn. We actually went a little bit higher. We kind of had the 1-day pullback after that, 2-day pullback. And then
and now we pushed higher.
So which means the market is strong. That's another sort of the marker that I look for. So
that's a good one. Yeah.
So let's see how it moves from here. Looks so far, the takeoff is like the most scary part because, anything can happen. So we haven't taken off. We're just starting to. So let's just follow along and see.
Let's see how she goes. Where are you going to be focusing this week, Barrie? Where's your
Well, the dollar, euro, they're looking like they're setting up, and crude. We got to continue to watch crude and the S&P. That's kind of what we're doing.
Excellent.
Yep.
Well, everybody, listen, have a great week. We know things are tumultuous and frustrating in some markets, but if you just filter out the noise, look at the price action, and look at the levels, right? Develop this grid and use these squares or other methods to really make it about, finding, okay, what happens at this level tells me whether to be bullish or bearish. It helps, take away 90% of the noise that's out there. Everybody have a good week. Barrie, you have a great week, and we'll talk next week.
Thanks, Ben. Good job. See everybody next week. Bye-bye.
Take care.